Every single assumption, every single one that even non-believing people make about the nature of reality, about human agency, and about the shoulds and oughts of life have come about because of the impact of Christianity in the world. It's not just that one man died in an obscure backwater of the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. It's not even that people believed he was and remains divine, while also somehow encompassing all of the created order in his existence. It's not even that his death and resurrection inspired a religion. By the way, the death and resurrection was another improbable claim based on the horrible Roman method of executing people known as crucifixion. And it's not even just that mode of death and resurrection has inspired people for 2,000 years and poked people endlessly for 2,000 years and motivated people endlessly for 2,000 years and led to the creation of a church on earth that seems, well, it seems unstoppable. It's not all that. All of these things, all of these factors could be dismissed, they could be backburnered or ignored in their entirety, and there are many people who do ignore, backburner, and dismiss all of these things in their entirety. And yet, these same people that ignore these messianic claims, well, they still have assumptions about shoulds and oughts based on the nature of those messianic claims. Human beings making messianic claims, of course, is nothing new. There are a lot of folks who claim to hold secret knowledge or spout wisdom while walking around with no visible sources of income. What makes the Christian ideals sticky, and the reason they won't come unstuck from any society or culture to whom they are attached, despite that society and culture's best efforts, is that the entire ideal is based not only on believing in probable claims, but then also walking out those claims. And those claims on truth and reality itself demand that individuals come to account, and it also demands that individuals change. Not systems, not institutions, not governments. People first, at the lowest possible level of the hierarchy, have to change. And then, when they change, the families change, and the communities change, and the neighborhoods change. And then at the end, the last stage is government and the state. This is really hard for people to wrap their brains around, but along that path to enlightenment, Christianity demands that the practitioner and the believer alike always return to how they have behaved themselves individually before blaming or holding accountable any external factor or system or structure. And even this is an assumption in and of itself. In the Western world, we actually don't think about where our assumptions come from, the root from which they are generated. What ideas our assumptions have been impacted by. We don't pay attention a lot to any of that. Instead, we merely build a scaffolding atop those ideas. And then when they fail to produce results we want in reality, or when they produce unintended consequences, as they sometimes do, we typically spend a lot of time and psychic energy arguing amongst ourselves, not about the assumptions, but about the scaffolding built atop the assumptions. It is the rare thinker, it is the rare philosopher or cultural critic who has the courage to question the assumptions that underlie the scaffolding itself. Mostly this is because such questioning can get you into trouble with the people in the institutions who would rather spend the time and psychic energy arguing about the scaffolding. And because such questioning can lead to walking down some dark roads about the nature of human reasoning, the nature of human emotions, and of course, the nature of existing in an inevitably and irrevocably fallen world. But all ideas, all of them, have consequences. And most ideas are based in assumptions about how things here's those words again, should or ought to work. Even when those ideas fail in the face of empirical reality itself, they persist and continue to propagate across time, growing tendrils into all kinds of various and sundry areas. This is where the power of the technology of the book comes to the forefront. Books smuggle ideas across time. And those ideas inevitably lead to consequential outcomes that even the original thinkers of those ideas, based on unexamined assumptions, could not have predicted. From this logical thread, we finally get to the book from which most of Western man's assumptions spring, the Bible, even for the most secular and atheistic person. Look, we live in a time when assumptions are beginning to be questioned in the West. We live in a time, post-Enlightenment, post-modern, post-deconstruction time, where we've torn down the scaffolding in as many areas as we possibly could, in family, community, culture, government, and institutions. We've torn up the gates, and we've banished the gatekeepers. And now we are looking around and we are wondering what is sacred and whether there can be anything grabbed as sacred from a world that seems so profane. There are tools, however, there's a technology, however, that can help us figure out the answers to these questions and potentially even rebuild these fences and these institutions and, well, rebuild individuals. That book is, of course, the one book upon which all other books are scaffolded, the book from which all of our assumptions about how the world should work and what reality ought to do come from. That book we will be covering to some extent next year, and we've covered it on the podcast before, but never intensely. It's time, when we think about restoration after the chaos of tearing down scaffolding, it's time for us to return to the root, to the concrete base of our assumptions. It is time to go back to the bedrock, and upon that rock, break ourselves so that we can be remade, so that we can be restored, so that we can rebuild after a time chaos, fourth turning chaos in the West. And well, that's it for me.